Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
To realize the future America needs, we understand what's needed from us. To face each threat head on. We've earned our place in the fight for our nation's future. We are Marines. We were made for this.
This was an easy one to put in our best and favorites of 2024. Kurt Warner's story inspires everyone, whether you're a player, coach, or fan, and he shared plenty of insight important to successful coaching in this episode. I watched the movie American Underdog on a flight to New Orleans in November, so it was cool to see some of the stories he shared in this episode come to life in the movie. Be sure to check out Kurt's QB Confidential resource, which is valuable for the quarterback and the quarterback coach. Enjoy this episode.
And a big part of the story is just learning through each of those moments. You know, I think that is one of the hardest things in life is how we deal with kind of the struggles and how we deal with the suffering. Well, it's so easy when things don't go in our favor for a period of time for us to go, well, I guess it's just not in the cards. I'm going to give up.
Welcome to the Coach and Coordinator Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Grabowski, and today we have a very special guest joining us, a true legend of the game, Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner. Kurt's journey to the NFL is the stuff of legends. From stocking shelves in a grocery store to leading the St. Louis Rams to a Super Bowl victory, Kurt's story is one of perseverance, determination, and an unwavering belief in himself. Today, Kurt shares with us not only his insights into the game of football, but also his personal journey and the lessons he's learned along the way. We dive into topics such as overcoming struggles, the importance of mentors, and the significance of positive self-talk. Kurt also gives us a behind-the-scenes look at his latest project, QB Confidential, where he aims to make knowledge accessible to aspiring quarterbacks and coaches of all levels. So whether you're a coach looking to improve your team's performance or a player seeking to take your game to the next level, this episode is packed with the valuable insights that you won't want to miss. Stay tuned for our Winning Edge takeaways following the interview. Well, on today's episode, very excited and honored to be joined by Hall of Fame quarterback, a guy who's just done an incredible job throughout his career, and I think is doing an incredible job now on the different platforms he has. And we're going to talk about one that he's developed for quarterbacks and for coaches called QB Confidential. Our guest today is Kurt Warner. So, Kurt, it's great to have you here and really appreciate that you're taking the time to share some ideas with us here on the podcast.
Well, I love being on and I love what you're doing. And I think we have kind of similar goals in being able to take our platforms and being able to impact the next generation, whether that be coaches or players. So I feel very fortunate that we have a lot of different platforms to do that and happy to be joining you today.
Yeah, and I want to dig into your platform because I think it's really unique. I haven't seen anything like it for quarterbacks. And really, again, I think it's for coaches as well. But I think there's so much to your story that our coaches can benefit from. And before we got going, I said the biggest one I see out there is so many coaches, young coaches especially, who maybe give up on the dream. I mean, it's not easy when you think of putting a dream out there like, hey, I want to coach in the NFL. Well, the reality is there's, whatever job you might be going after, there's 32 of those in the world. And just like you being a quarterback, I mean, there's, at any one time, maybe 100 quarterbacks in the league, tops, right? Between practice squads and guys who are on the roster. Those are obviously positions that require people who are elite, but that doesn't mean that someone can't become elite. Anybody can become elite, but it takes a plan. It takes belief, and it takes maybe being patient and overcoming obstacles. And I think we could go on for the whole time about your story and what you've done, but your thoughts on that idea of sticking with it, riding it out, making sure you do absolutely everything you can to get to where you want to.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is we do all have different journeys. And I kind of look at my journey, and for the longest time, I can think back to when I was a little kid and just started playing football. And I would watch, different players, Dan Marino, Joe Montana, play on TV. And I would go in my backyard and I would try to throw the ball exactly like they did. I would try to emulate their throwing motion, thinking, hey, if I can be like them, I can be great also. And then at some point I realized, okay, it's not about me becoming Dan Marino or me becoming Joe Montana. It's about me becoming Kurt Warner and the best version of me. And when you kind of shift that mindset, you start to realize, okay, every journey is going to be different as well. And that's kind of, I think, where my story resonates with so many people, because I believe my story is more like real life than these guys that get drafted number 1 overall and have great careers and go to the Hall of Fame. It's like, that's rare. What's more common is guys that have their supermarket moment where they find themselves in places that they don't want to be, and they're wondering how they got there, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of that place to go to where they really want to be. And so I think my story does resonate with a lot of people. And a big part of the story is just learning through each of those moments. I think that is one of the hardest things in life is how we deal with kind of the struggles and how we deal with the suffering. And, it's so easy to, you talk about coaches and guys giving up too soon. Well, it's so easy when things don't go in our favor for a period of time for us to go, well, I guess it's just not in the cards. I'm going to give up. As opposed to kind of looking and going, okay, why didn't this work out? Where am I missing? How do I need to grow? And then there are times where obviously there's times in life where somebody just didn't see something in us that's there, but you weren't able to showcase it, or they weren't able to see that in you, which doesn't mean you don't have it, which doesn't mean it's not there. And that to me, I think was a big thing for me, was always being confident in who I was and understanding what I had and what I didn't have, being realistic with, there were times I sat on the bench for 4 years in college. Why did I sit on the bench for 4 years in college? Why did I get cut by Green Bay? Why did these things happen? It wasn't just because coaches didn't always like me, or it wasn't always because I wasn't good enough physically, but there were reasons why everything didn't play out the way I wanted it to. And so it was understanding that, learning and growing in those things so I could become the player that I would ultimately become, that we're not all finished products. And I think that's one thing that, too many people do is they take one situation and think that's the whole definition of who they are, or that's as good as it's going to get, as opposed to looking internally or being realistic with the situation and going, well, maybe I need to move over here. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to play arena football for 3 years so I can become a better player than I was coming out of college because I only played 1 year. And those are the things that I think are so important, is to understand how to handle our struggles and how to realistically look at them. So we don't just have to go, oh, I'm going to give up on this because it didn't work out this time. We look at it and go, okay, how can I grow from this? Because I'm not giving up on it, because I know what I'm capable of. Now I just got to figure out a way to get where I want to be and be the best version of myself when I get there.
Along the way, as you were working through, like you said, the supermarket moment or whatever, somebody might have for themselves, who were the people, who were the mentors that really helped you through that? Because I don't think we do any of this on our own. We have to seek out others to help us along the way, whether that's finding knowledge or finding the best way to train or finding a different way of doing things. Who are those people for you?
It was kind of a combination of both. Like when I was working in a grocery store, there weren't a lot of those people. Like there weren't a lot of people that were believing. There weren't a lot of people that I could lean on that, had been where I was trying to go, or, necessarily even had that faith that I could get there. So there were those alone moments where I did have to lean on myself more and believe in what I knew about myself internally. But then when there was other situations, like when I was sitting on the bench for years in college, there were teammates. There were coaches that I confided in going, why? Why am I sitting on the bench? What do I need to do better? How can I do those things, And then as I, grew, there were other coaches, there were other people off the field that helped me to handle the highs and lows of life and helped me to gain that perspective. When I was talking about being realistic with where our situations are, what our situations are, and who we are in those moments, I think is so key. And sometimes it's hard for us to see that. It's hard for us to realistically look ourselves in the mirror and go, hey, you're really good at this, but you're not very good at that. Like, we all want to be great at everything, and we all want to think that we're great at everything, or even vice versa. Sometimes we find ourselves in those rough moments, and all we see in the mirror is somebody that's failing. Oh my gosh, you're not good at anything. You're terrible. You can't do this. And so to realistically understand where we're at, I think takes those people from the outside sometimes. Coaches, family members, been my wife a number of times that had lifted me up and given me confidence in those moments. But I think it's very important to make sure that when we do look in the mirror, we're realistically seeing what's there. And we're not, making something up, good or bad, because I don't think we grow when we do that. If we look at ourselves too highly, we don't grow in the areas that we need to grow. If we look at ourselves, too negatively or too lowly, then we have no confidence to push ourselves forward. But that's where those people became so important for me, was to kind of be my mirror. And I go, okay, what do you see? Where am I? Why am I struggling? And give me, quality feedback. Don't sugarcoat it and tell me I'm great when I'm not great. Give me the things that I need so I can apply them to the different situations and I can grow and keep moving forward. But Keith, I think that the most important thing was I never lost my internal confidence. No matter what my circumstances were, we always say this in our family, never let your circumstances define you. Good, bad, indifferent. That I knew who I was and I knew what I was capable of. And I always held on to that, which I think is so important, especially when you're talking about people quitting too soon. They too often allow a circumstance. Oh, I got into coaching and we didn't do very well. Or so-and-so, other coaches, we didn't get along, or I didn't fit together with the staff, whatever it is. But that doesn't have to define who we are. We still have to know who we are internally. And that to me was the key, along with finding those people that could give me a quality reflection of where I was and who I was, so I could continue to take steps and grow.
There's a couple things I think are worth pointing out. One, obviously, the positive self-talk is so important that you have to continue to believe in yourself. But questions, I think, seem to be a big part of how you approach this. As you just talking here in the beginning, a lot of questions you said you reflected on. Also, as I see what you've set up for training quarterbacks, there's a lot of questions in there too. And I think in doing this, it's about not just always getting good advice. It's about asking the right questions and understanding what are the right questions to ask. I think that's something I see as one of the things you do is am I hitting that right? Are questions an important part of this?
Yeah. I mean, I use the term a lot. Why? I want to know why. I wasn't starting for 4 years in college. Why? Somebody tell me, like a coach, I needed to talk to a coach for them to tell me why. What was I missing? Because I think when we stop asking those questions, then it just becomes, oh, well, the coach doesn't see my talent. Oh, the coach doesn't like me, and that's why I'm not playing. I always believe the best in people, first of all. So I believe the coaches weren't playing me for a reason. What was that reason? I wanted to know why. When you get into my platform, it's the first thing. Or when I'm talking to other coaches, tell me why you teach this. I want to know the why behind it, because I believe, that's the impetus behind everything that we do. If we're going to push ourselves and grow, we got to understand the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we teaching what we're teaching? Why is this going to help me be better? Why am I not having success? What am I missing? And so I think that is a huge part of the process for me all the time. No matter what I'm doing, whatever platform I'm on, I'm always asking why. Somebody tell me why, because then I can get, to the bottom of, okay, what do we need to do? If that's the why, what do I need to do? If that's the why, how do I need to coach this person? How do I need to teach this person if that's what they're telling me is why they're doing this? Okay, I don't agree with that. So now we have somewhere to go, somewhere to build off of, because I'm understanding the mindset or the thought process behind it. And that's what gives me the opportunity to take the next steps.
So I imagine there was a lot of why behind what you've put together in QB Confidential. For you, what sparked this idea? What sparked building this entire library, this curriculum for quarterbacks?
What really started it was I've done a little bit of coaching. I coach my boys in high school. And first, I know the knowledge base that I have, having played as long as I have, that I knew that I had this base that I could help people with, that people that wanted to play this position, young men that wanted to play this position, or coaches that wanted to teach it, that I had this wealth of knowledge. And I enjoyed coaching high school. But what I realized in coaching high school is you get 3 or 4 quarterbacks every year, and that's all you get. And I just kept thinking to myself, my gosh, I've got all this information and I only get to share it with 4 or 5 kids a year. And then, from there, you see how the landscape of the quarterback position has evolved and how many quarterback coaches there are across the country. And so I got to work with some of them and meet some of them. And I started to realize, oh my gosh, so many of these guys are teaching things that don't make sense to me, that, don't have, a real understanding of the why. Why are you teaching this? What's the basis of it? What are we doing with this? When it comes to like reading defenses, not a lot of people understand the why, what we're trying to do, how we're doing it. Coaches, why do we design plays the way that we design play? Like all of this stuff would go through my mind, but I was in such of a small capsule of being able to use all this knowledge when there's so many kids and coaches out there that are trying to learn this stuff, that I said, okay, I'm never going to get into full-time coaching, because I made a promise to my wife that once I got done playing, that full-time coaching is not part of the mix. So I do some individual coaching and all of that. But this was my means of going, here's a way to be able to use all this knowledge and put it on a platform so anybody can have access to it. That it doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter what level you're at, that everyone could have access to it. And then, as you know, the beautiful thing now is that you tape it, you save it, and it lives forever. Like this is something that will never go away. So next year, there's going to be 1,000 new quarterbacks. And then the year after that, there's going to be 1,000 new quarterbacks after that. And so, if you can only teach them at a conference, then you only get who's in that mix. You don't get everybody. And so this became a means for me to go, here is a library that I can put together that will live forever. And I can do it my way. And I can set it up in such a way that it can be useful for young, kids that are just starting, coaches that are just starting, and those that are playing at the highest level. And so that's really what it became, I want to take all this knowledge I have and I want to put it out there so everybody can use it and everybody can get access to it. And there's obviously a price on it. And what I learned very early on is you don't do anything for free, because if anybody gets anything for free, they don't see the value in it. So you have to put a value on it. Now, I think it's the cheapest and maybe the most ridiculous price that you could possibly have for what I've built. But I wanted to make sure people felt there was a value in it. But at the same time, I wanted to make it accessible to everybody. So you can get access to a month's worth of what I'm doing on QB Confidential for what you pay for a value meal at a McDonald's. And that was kind of the goal, is something that was attainable for everybody. That, okay, you give up a movie 1 month, or you give up, a value meal, a month, and you can get access to this curriculum. The prices that are out there for a conference, or, for a personal coach for an hour. And so those were all the things that kind of went into it, is trying to figure out what's the right model, what's the right price, so people do see value in it, but more importantly, everyone can have access to it. And so it doesn't matter if you can afford a personal coach. This can be your personal coach. If you have a personal coach, this can supplement what your personal coach is doing with you, and you can use it together. And I'm really big on, like, even when I have other coaches that come and work with me, I'm big on challenging what they're teaching. And I want people to challenge what I'm teaching. I just think the only way for us to really decipher what's the best is to hear 3 different ways of doing it and go, oh, Well, that one, I think there's a flaw there because I don't agree with that. And this one, I kind of like what they're teaching there, but we put it all together and now we have a multitude of things to pull from where we can go, this makes the most sense. This why, gives me the most understanding of why this is successful. But we can't do that if we never challenge what we teach or what we believe or what the thought process is. So I'm always asking coaches why. Tell me why. Why do you do it this way? Why is it important? And that becomes really, what the crux of my whole platform is why behind everything from going on the field. I'm going to tell you why I teach you to throw this way, why every element is this way, designing a play in your playbook. Here's why I do it the way that I do it with the spacing and the release patterns. Okay, the quarterback, why? Why am I reading it this way? What are we doing? What are we looking for on a particular play? And so that to me is really, I'm trying to make it all encompassing, but I'm trying to make it a tool for everyone to use to learn from. Coaches at the highest level, quarterback gurus, quarterbacks that are just starting to play, quarterbacks that are trying to grow. I wanted to make it all encompassing. And I believe, and you've seen a little bit of it. We've got 5 components in QB Confidential. So I've got the blackboard component, which is really getting up on the blackboard and kind of the nuances from learning coverages to how to attack coverages to what is a box count? What does that look like? And that sort of thing. I've got the on the field aspect, which you're always going to have teaching, all the different aspects on the field. I've got a playbook section where it can help you design a playbook, or it can take you inside different concepts and teach you the why behind running them a certain way and the importance of spacing and the importance of player A or receiver A and receiver B and how they need to coincide and how it connects to the quarterback. I've got the outside the box portion, which is more the leadership portion, kind of growing and using my experiences to help guys work through the different elements. And then study ball, which you can find that on my YouTube page. I do it a lot of different ways, but that's kind of taking all the other pieces and then putting it on film. What am I looking at on film? Looking at the guys in the NFL and how they're doing it. And what are the nuances that I'm looking at as a quarterback when I'm watching film or when I'm going out on the football field. And so all of the things kind of are separate, but are intertwined in different ways. And I think it's, again, the most comprehensive thing that I've seen out there to coach quarterbacks in offensive football. And I think it's because of all those unique components.
For sure. When I was coming up as a young coach, one, it wasn't the information boom we're in now.
Right.
And in some ways, maybe that was a good thing because now I think it's become so fragmented. People get things in like 2-minute doses and don't understand all the why. Right. But I did find myself confused. Well, I heard this guy over here say it this way. I heard this guy over there say it that way. Who is right? And you didn't have you connect the dots here and show how this all fits together. Even if you might not run a single one of those concepts that you have in the playbook. However, those concepts really teach how route structures work, how you attack different components of a defense. And it can allow you a lot of thought then to, okay, maybe we can't throw this dig deeper. My quarterback's arm strength's not there at this level. But now what can we do to design some plays that are similar to this? And the throwing mechanics, everything there, as you said, you want to be challenged with it. But also, you've put a lot of study into this. You obviously played at a very, very high level, having made it to the Hall of Fame, been an MVP in the Super Bowl. I mean, you can't argue there that you know what you're talking about. And I think that's the thing. We get our information sometimes so fragmented in coaching that we start to get confused or we latch onto something that sounds the most correct, but when you can see how things fit together, I think that's what I appreciate most about this is you've put together not just a library of stuff, that this is a curriculum, the way that you've approached it. And I think the 5 sections that you've outlined are so important to that you are hitting every aspect of quarterback development, not just how we're going to throw the ball, but how we think about plays, how we think about defenses, how we think about the head and the heart and all those things that come together, everything we want to build within our quarterbacks. To me, if I was a coach and I had this in front of me, I would be getting this resource, one, because it is incredibly inexpensive. And I would be sitting down with my quarterbacks. Even now, if I was still coaching now, I'd say, guys, this is going to be part of our off-season training. We're going to watch some of this together. We're going to talk about some of these things together. We're going to learn these things together. And I think that's what you've done in taking the time to do this. I thought, I haven't been able to watch all the videos yet, but I've watched some from each section, and I thought everything was really well thought out. And just starting with the beginning, one of the first videos I watched was the story of a play. And again, those questions that go along with the different parts of the things that have to come together for a football play to work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I've always taken the approach. I want to make the game as simple as possible, as quickly as possible. That to me is the goal. And so the beautiful thing that I have is I've got a quarterback's mindset. So everything that I do comes from a quarterback perspective. Even when it's designing a play, I put myself into the quarterback's shoes and the ball is in his hands and go, okay, what am I doing here to make this easier for my quarterback? How do I simplify it? How do I give him the opportunity to succeed? And so, you talked about that. It's the who, what, when, where, and why of a play. And, like you said, even if you don't run a number of the plays that are in the playbook, to just simply be able to learn how to ask those questions and how to, when you get to the why do we run routes this way? How does route A connect to route B? And how does it connect to what I'm trying to get open on a particular play? How does it influence the defense? Because what I'm trying to do is influence the defense for my quarterback to make the game easier. And so when you talk about the curriculum, that was a huge part. Is that I believe one thing that happens too often in our world is we get saturated with so much information so quickly that we never can get good at the nuance that makes football so great, but what makes the great. Every great coach, I mean, you've been around coaches that coach every position. Very seldom are those coaches coaching something so dramatically different that nobody else in the world coaches it, and that's what makes them great. No, what they're doing is they're coaching the nuance. They're coaching the detail that separates them, the understanding of those details that can help separate their players to another level. What are those steps? What are those elements? What are those nuance? And that to me is when I break this down, we can look at one segment of my on the field and, we're doing the slightest of movements, right? We're doing a drill that you don't even throw the football. But to me, those things become so important because we're building this normal for ourselves. Like, I got to learn that movement because that movement has to become natural for me. It has to become what I gravitate to and what my habits are over and over again. And some people might go, well, gosh, I don't want to do that over and over again. Like, I don't want to spend time, doing this small little movement. Yet to me, that's what it takes to be great is you got to become great at the little things to become great at the overall. And that's where this curriculum fits in is that, you talked about the 5 elements. You get one element each week. And so the goal is you take the element from week 1 and you spend a week studying it and learning it. It's not just the 10 minutes or 15 minutes of this segment, and then you put it away and then you wait for the next segment the next week. I want you to study that. Or if it's on the field, I want you to do that drill every day for a week. Make it become your normal. And then we can add piece number 2, because piece number 2 is going to connect to piece number 1. But if we don't have an understanding of piece number 1 and we're trying to add piece number 2 and then trying to add piece number 3, we're overwhelmed and we're not getting good at anything. And so there was a reason and a method behind the madness of not throwing everything out there at once and spreading it out and people taking time to build, step by step by step. And you can go as fast as you want, right? If you can grasp it, or if you're a higher level quarterback to go, oh, I know this. Let me jump into week 2 and we'll start building and we can go a little bit faster. And then you can also go, hey, I'm going to need 2 weeks on this lesson. So I don't need to jump to lesson number 2 until I'm ready to jump into it. And you can follow along at your own pace and grow at your own pace, but it's not set up so quickly that you're getting overwhelmed by each and every piece.
Yeah, I agree. I love the setup of it. And you have to get your reps no matter what you're doing. So you have that opportunity to learn something each week, get reps at it and then move on to that next concept and build skills. I really like the outside the box stuff. And I watched a few of those. And again, I think there's things that are very relatable to the player and to the coach. And one in particular was on Coach Coughlin's honesty. And I think you do an incredible job in here of teaching through stories. It's not just here's the concept. Like, you're going to give a concept of something, explain why it's important, but the way you illustrate it too, by relating, this is my experience with this concept or idea.
Yeah, I actually love that piece. I don't know if anybody, obviously you can find a number of leadership videos that are out there. But I do really enjoy that piece. Sometimes I was actually just taping some before we jumped on here. And, I get excited about those things. And each time I tape one of those outside the boxes, it illustrates something back to me that I want to apply at this point in time in my life. So it's not just, you talked about Coach Coughlin, and I learned so much from Coach Coughlin, the humility to, and I'm not sure, I've used a couple of his, but I'm not sure if you were talking about the example of when I was playing with the Giants and he asked me to come in after the season was over and write down everything that I didn't like about what they were doing. Like, how many coaches do you have that come and say, tell me everything I'm doing wrong? Like, tell me the things you didn't like about what we were doing, because, we didn't have a great year and it was his first year and he was getting a lot of scrutiny from the players and what have you. And I was blown away by that, because for those that know the story, I was benched after 9 games that season. So I was, could easily be a disgruntled employee that wasn't coming back, and now the coach gives me a chance to basically attack everything that he's doing wrong. But I was blown away when he asked me to do that, and then came back and we had a 2 or 3 hour conversation about it. And then, maybe the key component to the story was, years later, we have a great relationship still to this day, but years later, I saw him at the Super Bowl when he was, in the Super Bowl with the Giants, and he was in a makeshift office in Indianapolis. And I went to congratulate him and whatever. And he reached down and he pulled out all those pages of notes that I had given him years earlier and just told me, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I pull these out. And I just make sure I check myself and I look at these things and see what I'm doing and making sure that I'm coaching the right way and I'm growing as a coach, even after all the success that he had and winning Super Bowls. And so I just think life is so much like that, is that I'm always trying to learn from other people. And then I'm trying to take my experiences and help other people learn from those things. That's a great lesson, for players, but a really great lesson for coaches to hear and go, okay, I don't have all the answers. Tom Coughlin was a great NFL coach and didn't think that he had all the answers, was willing to learn and listen and challenge what he was doing. And I'm not going to sit here and say he changed everything that he was doing that I wrote on those notes, but he challenged what he was teaching. And to me, that's a beautiful thing, is when we can challenge what we're teaching. And sometimes when people challenge us, we get more steadfast and going, oh, they challenged me, but it just made me more convicted in what I believe. And then there's other times where people challenge us and it go, man, that's a really good point. Like, I don't know why I'm really doing it. That makes more sense. Let me start to adjust so I can be better in this area while being more convicted in another area. And so it is a fun segment for me that I love, because even when I'm telling one of those stories, it just kind of brings back that idea into my mind to go, okay, now that I'm in the media, or now that I'm a parent, been a parent for this long, am I still able to go, tell me what I'm doing wrong? Tell me where I can get better, as opposed to thinking I've got it all figured out. So these elements apply. And I think that's a beautiful thing, is that most people on here are going to be coaches or players, but you could take that segment alone, no matter what field you're in, no matter what walk of life you're walking, and you could apply that to your own situation, and I think grow from that particular segment.
No question. As I said, I think there's a lot here for coaches to learn too. Obviously things that have impacted you along the way with what different coaches have done, and sharing some of these stories as well. And it's not just for the quarterbacks to learn from. I think you can become a better coach by going through this curriculum as well. And I know I saw another section there. I wasn't able to dig into these, but I know you wanted to have a bit of a community feel too. So while this is stuff that's recorded, people do have the ability to ask you questions, and you'll respond to those in some videos as well.
Yeah, I do. I haven't been as good with that as I would like to be. I call it the coach's zone. So it was a means of going, if you're going through this platform, I want you to have access to me. I want you to be able to ask me questions about the platform or about what you're doing. And it's kind of morphed into, because everybody that gets on the platform has the ability to email me. So unfortunately, I haven't done as many of the videos, which I know I need to, because I know when one person asks the question, another person has that same question. But normally I'm responding one-on-one with a lot of coaches. And that's been the cool thing. I've actually got a Zoom set up this week with a coach that I connected with through QB Confidential. And we're going to sit down and go through some of his offense and talk about some of these details. And that to me was a component that I thought was really important. Is I wanted to be able to connect with those people watching and help them grow and be able to apply it to what they're doing personally and build those relationships. And so I do that, a number of times on the Coach's Zone. I need to do it more. So anybody that does get on it, please send me the questions, and I need to do a better job of answering it for everybody. But you do have access to be able to kind of bounce things off me and ask for a little perspective, which is something that I really enjoy, because it lets me know that people are engaged and they want to learn. And that's really what the platform is for. It's for those that want to dive in, want to be great, want to learn. And so when they reach out to me, I get excited, like, okay, can't wait to answer this question. I can't wait to dive into this, because I know I've got somebody that's really engaging in what we're doing.
Well, as I said, I really appreciate the resource you put together. I highly recommend it to coaches out there. You can find it at qbconfidential.com. I'll put that link in our show notes as well. Kurt, it's incredible having you here. Thank you for sharing some of these ideas, your stories, and giving us some insight into some of the things that help you become elite at what you do.
Well, I appreciate the platform to be able to do this. And I hope I can connect with all those coaches out there, or any of the players that are watching, because that's really the design. Design is, I want to help the next generation of players and coaches be great. That's kind of, I look at that as kind of my legacy now in the game. Is I'm done playing. We get done playing, when we're 40 years old. How can I kind of pay it forward to the next generation? So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about QB Confidential, and I hope to connect with you and a lot of these other coaches and players in the future.
Here are winning edge takeaways and ideas for implementation. 1, remember that we are not finished products. This statement that Kurt Warner made not only applies to the approach we take with the people we coach, but also to ourselves as the coaches. We constantly must be developing and evolving, and one situation or season or stop in our journey is not who we are. It's part of our evolution. We have to continue to learn, develop, and grow as professionals and people in this profession in order to reach our full potential. We have to learn how to handle our struggles and how they help us get to our ultimate goal, whatever that may be. 2, ask good questions of yourself as a coach and teach that skill to your players as well. Too many times we leave things at the surface level. We don't dig into the why and the details that can help us get to the level we want to be. So like Kurt does, asking those questions of yourself constantly, asking those questions of your players constantly, even when some of those questions are difficult, will help you get the answers you need to be able to move along and evolve yourself as a coach or a player. And 3, coach the details and the nuances of the game. What Kurt said is true. With access to the knowledge today, having effective plays is only part of the mix. And it's something that I noticed years ago as I was recruiting on Friday nights and watching high school football games where I didn't have a vested interest in the game, was purely watching what was going on the field. I'd see 2 teams with almost the exact same playbook. They'd be running the same things on offense or defense. They'd have very similar players, yet one was way ahead of the other, and I think it really all comes down to the details. Those who can teach the details of the game, understand the nuances, and make sure that they can give that understanding to their players are going to be the ones that succeed. So Kurt Warner's resource is a great example of something you can use to get those details and nuances and coach those things. Again, I highly recommend it. Go to QBconfidential.com to check that out. Be sure you're following all we do at coachandcoordinator.com. You can sign up there for a weekly tip sheet, which shares the best ideas from each week. And follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.